starting off at the top, these ones are like the ones that you did on your assignment at the very top. So I want you guys in your groups to do 1 through 5. Okay, you need to state which lines are parallel given that information, and then tell me why. So what reason would they be parallel? Okay, so do those first 5, and then we'll go over them. Why are you?
You didn't ask me.
I should have.
Well, I was too late.
So first I identify the transversal, so which line hits both of those angles. That one. Okay, so that transversal has to intersect your line. So what's the other line that makes it angle A?
A, right?
Well, AB is your transversal. So what's the other line that makes up angle A? Yeah, so AG would be one of your lines. Now, angle 3, this is your transversal. What's the other line that makes up angle 3? CE. So those two lines would have to be parallel.
I don't know. Exactly, but you can't.
CE. Oh, sorry, CE. DC.
Okay, what are you on? I have one.
So you're looking, this is your transversal. What line, what other line makes up angle 4?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Oh,
And then the line that makes up angle 5 is CE. So those two would have to be parallel.
That's all.
I know you're not, some of you aren't done yet, but I do want to kind of start going through these. So if you still don't understand what's going on with these types of problems, you need to pay attention. Okay? So for number 1, you're looking at angle A, this angle right here, and angle 3, this angle right here. Okay, so what I do first is identify which line is my transversal. So which line hits both of those angles? AD. Okay, so now I want to look at the other line that makes up angle A. Well, AD is the transversal, so the other line that makes up angle A would be AG. Okay, for 3, AD is the transversal. The other line that makes up angle 3 would be CE. So those two would have to be parallel to each other. Okay, so I can write AG is parallel to CE. Now if those two lines are parallel and those two angles are equal, what type of angle pair are those? CA. Okay, they're corresponding angles. So I'm going to use that converse to prove those lines are parallel. Okay, next I have angle 3 and angle 4. I want to see what side they share in common. Well, that would be CE, so that's your transversal. Now the other line that makes up angle 3 would be this CD segment here. And the other line that makes up angle 4 would be this segment FE up top here. So those two must be parallel to each other. Okay, so we can write FE is parallel to CD. Now, given that information, what type of angle pair would 3 and 4 be?
AIA.
Yes. So I can use that converse. Okay, number 3, it says that segment GB is parallel to segment FC, and segment ED is parallel to segment FC. Okay, both of these have this segment FC in common. So which two lines should be parallel to each other? Given that they're both parallel to FC. GB is parallel to ED. Okay, that is the transitivity of parallel lines. Okay, so again, that was one of your reasons on the top of that note sheet from yesterday. So it kind of looks like the transitive property because they're both parallel to the same line. Number 4, if I look at angle 3 plus angle AGF. So we're looking at this angle and this angle. That looks kind of weird, right? Can I prove any lines parallel given that information? No. Number 5, we're looking at angle D plus angle 2. Okay, those two equal 180. Okay, they do share a line in common. They share that bottom line there, BD. Okay, so the other line that makes up angle D would be ED, and the other line that makes up angle 2 would be GB. So those two lines have to be parallel. Okay, then what type of angles are those two?
CIA converse.
Yes. Okay, so those are your one-step proofs. So you're looking for those parallel lines, and then what reason behind it. So we are going over 2-column proofs. Okay, so that means we're using all of our properties from our property packet. Most of them have to do with angles. Okay? And we're using those converse reasons, or we're using if lines are parallel, then those angles are congruent. Okay, so we're going to look at the first one. Again, we're going to take it step by step. So we're going to look at the given. We're given that ray AB, that line right there, bisects angle CAD. Now before I go anywhere, I'm going to start labeling my picture. If AB bisects that entire angle, what do I know in my picture then? Bisect. What does bisect mean?
Splits it so like they're congruent, right?
It splits it so that they're congruent. Okay, so if AB bisects that angle CAD, what do I know about 1 and 3? They're congruent. I'm going to label that. Then I'm also given angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Again, I'm going to label that in my picture. Okay, so since angle 1 has 1 dash, angle 2 should have 1 dash. Those are congruent to each other. Now I want to prove that segment AD is parallel to segment BC. Okay, so somehow I have to get congruent angles or supplementary angles to use one of my converses. Okay, that's what I need to use when I'm proving lines are parallel. Okay, so you're looking for those congruent angles within your picture. So starting off, my statements here, again, we always start with our given. Okay, that was our given information. Now we need to use that given information to do our next step. Well, I'm using AB bisects angle CAD. Okay, I labeled 1 and 3 congruent. So my next statement was angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Why did I label those two angles congruent? Bisect, because I had a bisector. So I'm going to use definition of bisect. Okay, does that step make sense? Why I said those were congruent, why I chose that reason.
Yes.
Okay, now from 2 to 3, I still need to use what I wrote in statement 2 and what I wrote in my given. Well, if I look here, I have angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Well, doesn't that mean 3 is congruent to 2?
Yes.
Since they're both congruent to 1? Okay, what's my reason behind saying that those two are congruent?
Substitution.
Or transitive? I heard somebody say it. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to look at my picture because I only have one more reason. And it's proving that these lines are parallel. So I'm going to look over here. I said angle 3 is congruent to angle 2, and I'm trying to prove AD is parallel to CB, right? I'm going to use one of my converses. So I'm looking at my angles. What type of angle pair would 2 and 3 be? If those are parallel lines. AIA. They're alternate interior angles.
Yes.
Okay, so by that converse, I can say that those lines are parallel. Okay, so when you're proving lines parallel, you're using those converses. Any questions on my first 2 column proof here? Okay. Next one. In this one, I'm given that line M is perpendicular to line P. What does that mean about all of these angles? They're equal, so what degree are they?
90.
I also have line M is perpendicular to line Q. So those are 90 degrees. Now before I get started, I'm going to label this angle here as 1 and this angle here as 2. Just because. Alright. So I'm trying to prove that line P is parallel to line Q. Okay, so we want those two lines to be parallel. So again, we need to start off with our given information. Okay, next in number 2, I said angle 1, this is why I labeled it 1 and 2. Angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. Okay, well, I'm using that they're perpendicular. I have 2 lines that are perpendicular, so they create right angles. Do you remember what reason that is? 2 lines, perpendicular, they make right angles. It's a definition.
A definition? Definition.
I was saying. Oh, shoot.
That's the definition of perpendicular lines. Okay, you have 2 lines that are perpendicular. Lines with perpendicular lines.
Both came to the conclusion that it was either one or the other. So.
Alright, so from here, angle 1 and 2, since they're right angles, they have to be congruent to each other. If all right angles are congruent to each other, what is that reason? That's the right angle theorem. Remember when I said when we were first going over this, the one you're going to use the most with the right angle theorem was that all right angles are congruent to each other?
Okay.
They're right angles, so they're congruent to each other. Right angle theorem.
What's the definition of right angle? Like, where it's just...
If it says it's a right angle, then you can say it's equal to 90 degrees. So if I would have said angle 1 is equal to 90 degrees, then that would be a definition of a right angle.
Gotcha.
Okay, so with that information, I'm using 1, okay, this one right here, and 2 are congruent to each other. Okay, I can say that these two lines are parallel to each other then. Okay, those two angles are corresponding. So I can use the corresponding angle converse. Questions on number 5, 6, number 6, or number 5? All right, I want you guys to try number 7. It's only three reasons. Okay? Make sure you label your picture and look at your given first. Don't look at the 2 columns until you label your picture.
Why do I know?
Does this say anything about you having a
Absolutely.
Okay. So you can. Not see anything. What type of angles are 4 and 5? If there's one parallel.
That's right. I know. In the CIA.
No.
Is it interior or exterior? Interior or exterior? Huh? I'll take interior. Converse. You want to write the explanation?
No.
Well, like, it's the same stuff.
Oh no, those ones have more steps. All right, looking at number 7. Okay, we are given that angle 5 is congruent to angle 6. Label your picture. Please label your picture. Okay, we're also given angle 6 is congruent to angle 4. Okay, we're trying to prove that AD is parallel to BC. Make sure you look at which lines you're trying to prove parallel. I think some of you are looking at AB and DC. So you used 4 and 6 were congruent to say that and used CA converse. But those aren't the lines you're proving parallel. Okay, you're proving these 2 lines parallel, not these 2. Okay, so I want to use this information, my given, that I labeled on my picture. Okay, from that information, I can come to my second statement here. Well, if I had 5 congruent to 6 and 6 congruent to 4, I can say 5 is congruent to 4 since both are congruent to 6. Okay, so that is either transitive or substitution. Okay, from this step, I want to look back at my picture at angles 5 and 4. Okay, 5 and 4 are right here. And I want to identify what type of angle pair 5 and 4 are. Those are alternate interior angles. So by that converse, those lines are parallel. Again, when you're proving lines parallel, so if your last step looks like this, two lines parallel to each other, you use a converse. Questions on 7? Okay. On the back. Number 8.
First one you give.
We are given that angle 1 and angle 5 are supplementary. What does supplementary mean?
You add the 180.
They add to 180. We're also given 1 and 4 are supplementary. So those add to 180. We want to prove that line J is parallel to line K. So these two right here are parallel. Well, somehow what I want to do is get these two congruent to each other, because those would be what type of angle pair? If those are parallel, they'd be alternate interior. So somehow I have to set up my proof so I get these two equal. Now if these two are supplementary, what can I do with their measures? Add them and set them equal to?
180.
What about these two?
Same.
Same thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is what should be going through your head as you use your given. So since angle 1 and angle 5 are supplementary, angle 4 and angle 1 are supplementary, that was our given information. Now like I said, since 1 and 5 are supplementary, I can add them to be 180. Angle 1 and angle 4 are supplementary, so they're added to be 180. So I'm just using this, that they are supplementary, their definition of supplementary angles. Okay, it is not supplement theorem. Okay, supplement theorem, you'd have to have a linear pair, meaning 1 and 4 would have to be next to each other and create a line. They do not. Okay, since those are supplementary, I can add them to be 180. That's the definition of supplementary angles.
Gotcha.
From 2 to 3, I need to use what I did in statement 2 to get statement 3. Well, if I look here, I still have that part of that statement in 3. And if I look here, I still have that part of that statement here. Well, why did I say they're equal to each other? Because they were both equal to 180.
Yes.
Okay? They were both equal to 180, so I can replace this 180 here with angle 1 plus angle 4. If I'm replacing something, that is substitution. Okay, now I want to see what changed from 3 to 4. Well, I don't have this angle 1 anymore, or this angle 1 anymore. I just have angle 5 is equal to angle 4. So I got rid of these angle 1s. How did I do that? I subtracted. I subtracted the measure of angle 1 from both sides of my equation. So that is the subtraction property of equality. I'm just going to put an equal sign. I hope you know what that means. Now from 4 to 5, I went from equal measures to congruent angles. Do you remember which? Yes. That is the definition of congruent angles. Do not write segments. We are not working with segments. This is an angle. Please write angles.
Right?
With number 5 to to your final statement here, I need to look at these two angles. Okay, angle 5 and angle 4. Those are congruent.
Yeah.
That angle pair, if those lines are parallel, would be alternate interior angles. So I'm going to use that converse. Questions on number 8. If you don't know how I got a certain reason, you need to ask. All right, next one is a little bit different. Okay, so this time you're given parallel lines. Okay, you're not proving parallel lines, so you're not going to use a converse. Okay, you only use those converses when you're proving lines parallel. This time you're given lines are parallel. Okay, so we have P parallel to Q, and we want to prove that angle 1, measure of angle 1, plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180. Okay? So from here I'm going to use my parallel lines. Okay? That's given. With those parallel lines, I want to look at the angles that are created. Okay? Well, if I look at 3 and 4, what type of angles are those? They are supplementary, but what type of angle pair are they? They are consecutive interior angles. Now I know consecutive interior angles I can add together to be 180.
Correct.
Okay? So this is where yesterday I was saying, if you look back at section 3.2, in that section, in our note sheet, I went over some of the reasons if you're given lines parallel. For this one, it was if lines are parallel, then your consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Okay? Since I was given these lines are parallel, that's why we say if parallel, then those angles from our picture, those consecutive interior angles, I can say are supplementary, so they add to 180. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, next I want to go to statement 3. Okay, this says angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. Well, my previous statements aren't helping me figure out why I said this. Where should I look?
Is it vertical?
Yes.
Vertical.
You should look at your picture. Okay? So I said 1 is congruent to 3 and 2 is congruent to 4. Well, those are vertical angles. Okay, your vertical angles are congruent. That's what the vertical angle theorem says. Now from 3 to 4, it is definition of congruent angles. Because I'm taking these congruent angles and I'm changing them into equal measures. Okay, both pairs there, equal measures. Okay, so we have definition, congruent angles. Then my last one is what I'm trying to prove. Okay, so somehow I changed the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2. Well, if I go back up at the top, I still haven't used this statement. Okay, so I have the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4. Somehow I changed to the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 2. Well, if I look right here, my 3 was equal to 1, so I can replace 3 with 1. And 4 here was equal to 2, so I can replace 4 with 2 in that statement. If I'm replacing something, what is that? Substitution. And then I'd be done with my proof. Questions on number 9? All right, I want you to try the last one. Remember, you need to use your given information to create your next statement. Grouping lines are parallel. Okay, so you need to lose in converse. Okay, statement right before it.
Can I go on the breakout space?
No. Like 7 minutes after class. Okay. So, with your proof, you're going to use your given information. Okay. In that given information, I have A is parallel to B. Okay, so I want to look at my picture and see what angles I could say are supplementary or congruent given those lines are parallel. Well, I have this angle pair here, 1 and 3. Okay, so since A and B are parallel, so if parallel, then I know that those consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Ran out of room. It's fine. From here to statement 3, I have angle 1 is equal to angle 2. Well, in my given, I had angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So I went from congruent angles to equal measures. So that is the definition of congruent angles. From 3 to 4, okay? In 4, now I have the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 is equal to 180. Well, I'm using statement 2 and statement 3 to say this. Okay, so since angle 1 is equal to 2, I replaced angle 1 with angle 2 from statement 2. Okay, since I'm replacing, that is substitution. Now I'm proving lines parallel. That means I'm going to use a converse. So I need to look at my previous statement, look at my picture, okay, and decide what type of angle pair that is. Okay, so I have 2 and 3, and I'm proving D and C parallel. Well, those are consecutive interior angles. So by that converse, those lines would be parallel. Any questions?